Springfield City Club Board of Directors President. Thank you again for joining us today. Really excited to have with us Springfield Police Chief Jami Resch. Chief Resch is our first female police chief in the city of Springfield. Very proud of that. She comes to us with nearly 30 years of experience with the Portland Police Bureau and served as their chief of police. And we're excited to welcome her today to talk a little bit about her vision for Springfield. Jami, thank you for joining us.
Talk into this, right? So there's people online, I guess. I brought this just to kind of keep me on track. I have a tendency to wander sometimes, so. And I brought Wendy with me because I also have a tendency to talk really fast. So she has the job of, if you see her doing this, that means that, you know, I'm talking too fast. So, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to everybody. As was briefly mentioned, I did start my policing career in 1999 with the Portland Police Bureau, and I did 24 years there. Officer, then sergeant, lieutenant, captain, commander, assistant chief, deputy chief, back down to assistant chief. I was promoted to chief December 31st of 20, right before 2020 started. So it was a bit of a interesting time then with COVID and then all of the protests and everything that Portland experienced for a long time. I always tell people I had a fabulous career. I have absolutely no complaints about working for the Portland Police Bureau. I think it gave me a lot of opportunity. But then when Chief Shearer came down here, after a couple of years, he said he was going to hire a deputy chief. And so he called and said, you know, would you consider coming down to Springfield? And I had really never been to Springfield. My oldest son at the time was a Beaver. So I had been to Corvallis, but I was not down here a lot. We did have season football tickets for a while. That was pretty much my experience of coming down here. And at first I was like, no, thanks, I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna be good. And then I kind of thought about it a little bit more and I was like, I'm not really ready to retire, but I'm ready to leave Portland. And so this was a great opportunity for me to come down here, work with Chief Shearer for a while, and experience a whole different, policing is policing, but it's very different down here. This is a much smaller department. When I was the chief in Portland, we had over 900 officers at the time, and City of Springfield right now we have 69 sworn. So it's like supervising basically one shift in Portland, but it's amazingly better in a lot of ways in the fact that like I know every officer that works for Springfield. I see almost all of them every day when they work. And you can't do that when you work with an agency that has 1,300 people. You can't see everybody every day. So I've appreciated the opportunity to come down here. This is on my list here also. Some of the things that I immediately noticed was just how welcoming the city has been. Everybody that I have met has been like, we're so thankful that you're here. Is there anything that we can do to help you? And it's just been a really positive experience. And that's also with the officers. You know, they had a chief that came from Portland and now a deputy chief that came from Portland. And I think there was a lot of concerns about, are they gonna bring Portland? And it was kind of our goal was like, no, we're just trying to come down here, make Springfield Police Department the best that it can be. We'll take some of the things that we know work well up there, but we have no intent of like turning it into the Portland Police Bureau. This is already a fantastic department. So, and that was one of the things I noticed too, is that the officers were welcoming, even though they had no idea who I was, which is nice to see. They didn't have to be that way, so I was very grateful when I came down here to see that. A couple other things, just I'm sure that you've all, I don't know how much experience you have with SPD officers, but one of the things or a couple of things I really appreciate is how eager they are to work. One of the points of pride with all of the officers is that SPD still responds to every call. And there's a lot of agencies that can't do that because of call volume and the size. And so there you see a lot of people are, you know, taking reports over the phone or taking reports online. And we've talked about that because there are some people who would prefer to do that if you just need a police report or something. But the officers really pride themselves in responding to every call and responding to every call in a very timely manner. Our average response time is well under 5 minutes, which is really, really great. When you're in a larger city, like I said, sometimes that's harder to do. But they don't want that to change. So as they see like more and more people, moving into Springfield, which is fantastic, then they start asking me like, are we gonna get more police officers? Because that's gonna impact, our ability to continue to come to calls. And that's something that they really wanna be able to do. And they're also really great. I always tell people, one thing about policing is it never stays the same. Absolutely never stays the same. If I were to go back and look at the policy manual when I got hired in 1999 and then compare it to the one that we have right now, it's vastly different. There's different laws, there's different rules, there's different community expectations. And so whenever I get new officers, I'm like, I want you to take all of the policies right now and just put them in a binder, and then over your career, just keep a track of how many times this changes. Because one of the things that I always tell them is like, police don't like change, they don't like the way it is either, but they don't like change. But you have to be able to adapt to that. It is going to change throughout your career. I'm gonna tell you, you had to write a report today that you didn't have to write a report that you didn't have to do yesterday, or something like that. But they've taken it all in stride, and there has been a lot of change in SPD over the last 5 years. Like I said, different chiefs, different policies, different expectations. We changed a lot. We went through accreditation, which is a really good thing, so that we've had all of our policies looked at and verified. And then also we do a lot of training on those policies, because one of the things that I believe in is if I give clear expectations, then I get good work. Because if people know what they're expecting to do and have a clear idea of how to do it, there's not a question in there. And then they also understand like what my expectations are and how they're gonna be held accountable. I think one of the hardest things is working for somebody that you don't know what they want. And you don't know what's gonna happen if you mess up or something. And, I think there was kind of a misnomer maybe about police work, that I have an expectation of perfection, and it's impossible, right? Nobody's gonna be perfect throughout their whole career. And so what I tell like the supervisors and such is that I want you to address any issues that you see at the lowest level possible. Because if we do it right away, then it never rises to a level that I need to see. And so that's why I tell the supervisors, like, if we have something that gets to my level, I feel like somewhere along the line, we kind of failed a bit. Because it probably didn't start out at a level that needs to reach the chief of police. So, and I think the officers appreciate that. I try to be in, we call it briefing here. That's one thing that I've learned coming down here is policing's policing, and there is a different term for everything when you go places. So like, it's the Portland Police Bureau, it's the Springfield Police Department. And so for a long time, I would say the Springfield Police Bureau, my husband who's a retired police officer, like this department. Okay. And then, in Portland, we call it roll call. Here you call it briefing. And for those of you that don't know, before every shift starts, all of the officers meet in a room, the sergeant's there. They give you all of the updates, all of the stuff that I'm telling them to say. They figure out where they're gonna work. Just a little bit, if you don't know, the city of Springfield is divided into districts. And so when the officers get to work, they're given a district number, like 11, 12, 13, I think we go all the way to like 23. And that tells them where they're gonna work that day. So they know, and it can change every day because different people are working. And then it's good for them to go around and work different areas. But in Portland, it's called roll call. Here it's called briefing. I still mess that one up every once in a while. They point it out when I say, well, we don't have roll call, sorry. Yeah, so we refer in Portland, if you're on the radio, you say dispatch. Here we say station. Funny story, when I first got here, I went to meet a community member at the Starbucks off of Mohawk. They wanted to have a meeting. And right there is a Harbor Freight, right next to it in the parking lot. And I get out of my car and somebody comes running across the street. And they're like, there's a fight in the parking lot at Harbor Freight. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I went to get my radio and I was like, I don't know my number. Like everybody has a number, like your call number, like your 2 Sam 11 or something. Nobody told me what my number was, and I didn't even think to ask for it. I knew my number from Portland, which that was not gonna make any sense to them. So standing in the parking lot and they kind of separated a little bit and the fight was over, so I was just able to go over there and handle it. But I thought, how ridiculous is that gonna look that the deputy chief can't talk on the radio? I'm like, hello, this is Jamie. Yeah, exactly. Somebody comes to, I don't know where I'm at, actually, they're on a major street. Yeah, I know the address in a second. But so it just takes a lot of, and luckily right now, we are getting a lot of lateral new hires. And so I'm pretty sympathetic to those folks when it's like, just give it a minute. I know we're gonna say things a little bit differently and have lots of conversations with our folks. If they mess up, it's just because you get into a habit, right, of how you do things. But I mean, there's just been some kind of funny stories related to that kind of stuff, but everybody's been very gracious when I do make mistakes. I think one of the things that Laura, when you asked me to talk about, there was like kind of like my philosophy, which I've talked a little bit about, like kind of the clear expectations to meet equals good work. Another piece that I really focus on is I want every member of SPD to have ownership in SPD. What I try to tell the folks that wear these uniforms is when people think of the Springfield Police Department, they think of people who wear this, right? We are actually probably, I don't really know how to say this, we do the least amount of work, right? We respond to the calls and we write the reports, and then it goes from there. We have admin staff that make sure that everything that we wear, our computers, our phones, our cars, those all have to work just so I can go take that call, right? And then we have all of our record staff so that once I write that report, then it's gotta go somewhere. It's gotta get to the DA's office. There has to be 17 copies sent to different people. All of this stuff has to be done. I just do one little tiny piece of it. And with if my piece was done, nothing would happen. Like, court wouldn't get prosecuted, people wouldn't actually go into our jail, which is another thing I'll talk about. So I want our officers to understand that we are the most visible part of SPD, but it takes every single member of SPD to make it work. I want everybody to have that ownership and appreciate what everybody else does. So one of the things that I was talking about changing when we get our new hires now is I want each new hire to have to go do 2 weeks in each of our departments. So you need to go into the jail for 2 weeks and see how they do their job. You need to go into property for 2 weeks and see why it's so important that when I tell you to fill out this form this way and put it this way and package it this way, there's a reason for that. It's not just, we don't just sit around and be like, how can we make it harder? How can we make it more complicated? There's a purpose for that. I want them to go to records. And so when, why does it make a difference if you turn in a report late? This is why it makes a difference. And so I think it's just important for everybody to have that perspective of what makes your organization run. And then it gives them basically an ownership and not just their part, but everybody else's part as well. And so that's one of the things that we historically have not done, maybe a little bit, but I really want to make that part of our new employees onboarding process. Same when we hire non-form professional staff. I want them to be able to go out for a couple of weeks in the ride with the different officers. So one, they see what they experience, but two, then they get to know everybody. It's really hard to walk into a department and you don't know who anybody is. And it takes a lot for professional staff to walk up to somebody in uniform and tell them, I need you to do something, because we're usually the people telling people what to do. And so I know that that can be hard for some of our newer employees. I kind of want to break down that barrier for all of them. Another kind of my perspective is I believe that like support in an organization comes from top down. And so one of the things I've been doing is meeting with people individually. And my first question is, what can I do to support you? I really honestly feel that like people feel supported and they understand my expectations, then we're gonna have fewer and fewer problems. And I've had some really good feedback with people providing things like they appreciate the things that we do, but it's just, I think a lot of people, so when I got hired, if the chief of police came to roll call briefing, that meant something bad was happening, right? Like the chief didn't just come to roll call to say hi to everybody. But I want that feeling now. And so I do try to go to all of the briefings. But again, I think that's what people expect more now, which is different than when I first got hired. You didn't want to see your boss. Now people want to see the boss. They want to talk to the boss and they want to be able to ask questions. I have 2 boys, one's 28, one's 22. And it's even between 28 and 22, it's a very different dynamic. The 22-year-old is the why. Like, always ask why. Why are we doing this? Why? And I noticed that a lot of the younger officers, they want to know the why. When I got hired, if they said, go do this, I said, okay, because you didn't ask why. That was just your job. And so I think that's changing a little bit. Probably for the better too. They have an understanding of it. But yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's any other philosophy pieces that I've met. I think I just wanna emphasize the commitment that the Springfield Police Department has to this community. I try to stress every opportunity I get that they appreciate the support from all of you. The support for the police department here is amazing. And it should not be taken for granted for 1 second, because like I told them, it can end in a second. And you need to make sure that you appreciate every single time somebody says, thank you for your service when you're in Starbucks or you're at the grocery store or wherever you are and they see you in uniform. You need to appreciate that. You need to understand that that's because they trust that you're going out and you're doing the right thing, and that you're supporting this community. And I don't want them to take that for granted, because like I said, it can end quickly and it's very isolating when you don't feel like you have support. And so I'm hopeful that with all of the things that we do, that if there is something that happens, then in the back of yours mind and the community's mind, they understand that they have either had so many positive experiences with SPD or they know an SPD officer, that they at least take that moment to think, I'm gonna find out all of the information before I make a judgment. If we do make a mistake, I'm always like, we need to own it. We will own it, if there's a mistake that's made. But I just appreciate how much support, not only have I gotten since I've been down here, but just how much every single day I see the police department gets. It's amazing. Everybody's very positive, just like, and walking around in uniform, how many times people stop and say thank you. It's, I always kind of feel like this is, I think that hasn't always been the case in my career. I'm trying to be very politically correct. I can tell I'm on TV, so I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. So I just want you to know that I truly, honestly appreciate it. And I'm gonna try to make sure that SPD officers also understand how important and how fragile that trust can be. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I don't know if anybody has questions. Yeah,
So I had a couple,
sure.
and, let's see if I can kind of put them together, but there's a new book that came out, it's called The Rebirth of Gotham. And it was talking about basically broken windows in New York, how positive that was, and we pulled away from it some of the repercussions. But, I also, was in the city council when, Duluth, trading, thank you, and also Jerry's came to testify because they had groups of people going in and stealing. And so I've watched you folks work with them.
Yeah,
And so I'd like you to maybe talk about that. I've seen the reports in
Yeah.
so it's working. But here's something that's kind of come up recently. It's based upon previous information, usually from the police officers. We used to have a large homeless encampment. They talked about the crime in them, the issues, and obviously people preying on each other. But then there are, how can I put it? People are hiding in plain sight that actually are homeless, but really should be incarcerated. And we're not talking about the vagrancy. We're talking about people that have done various crimes of property, people, things like that. So
yeah.
have fun.
Okay. I'll ship my way through that. Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to, I'm sure, like you said, you've seen the press releases that we've done called organized retail theft. So last year, we got a very large grant, probably one of the largest grants I think we've ever gotten, from the state. It was like $580,000 to basically try to have an impact on organized retail theft. We had been doing missions as we could, and basically this is all done outside of normal patrol hours. We do this on overtime, because the officers are responding to calls, and a lot of times, if we're gonna do, like, let's say we're gonna go up and do a mission in Gateway, we'll have, like, let's say 10 officers and a dispatcher, and then we work with the loss prevention folks that are with the stores that are up there. So you can't really do it while you're on patrol because you just get pulled away all the time, and then the loss prevention people would just be there. So what we've noticed though is that working these missions, and then we did get some, we could use some of that money for equipment, so we bought some surveillance equipment so that we don't have to be right there. As you can imagine, like, anybody who sees an FIU thinks it's a police car, so it's not really a good idea just to park an FIU in the parking lot and people are like, oh, the police are here. So we've been able to make some changes there. It really has been the relationship. So our crime reduction unit, which is a group of like 4 or 5 officers who take on these tasks as extra duty. They do it, like I said, on overtime or days off and stuff. They forged all of the relationships with all of the, loss prevention folks and different business owners. And so they were able to set up these meetings or set up these missions. And when we do them, we're arresting a lot of people. I think the biggest one we had, we arrested, don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 individuals. And so what we've seen over time, because I think the word's kind of gotten out, the difference in Springfield is if you get arrested for, shoplifts or something, or theft 3 or theft 2 in Springfield, is, you go to jail. Right, so we can take you and we can book you in our jail, misdemeanor jail, so any misdemeanor, you go to jail. And so that has an immediate impact on the folks that we arrest during those missions. And then also, obviously, then they go through Springfield court, or municipal court. And so what we're seeing, and I mean, I think it's kind of anecdotal because we don't have proof of it, we just hear it from the people that we're arresting, is that they're like, well, we're not gonna come to Springfield and steal anymore. Because then if we do, then we go to jail. And so I have asked our retail providers, and they have said, I don't have numbers for you, but they have said they have seen a decrease in theft from their stores. We work a lot with Target, we work a lot with Jerry's, and then of course the Walmart that's right next door, we work a lot with them. And then kind of that whole gateway area, like there's a Hobby Lobby, Duluth, and lots of those stores that are up there. But it's all based on a grant, and that grant is the backup for like renewal in the legislature right now. And so we've asked that they continue that. If we don't get grant funding for that next year, then we would go back to just doing it with what we can afford out of our budget, which is very, very little. We would still do it as soon as we can, because we do realize it has a significant impact. But it would be much more limited if we didn't have the grant funding for that type of thing. The officers really appreciate it. I know our crime reduction unit, they kind of want to go out and they want to do all the fun stuff with policing, find the bad guys, which is really, I know what they want to do. And I think a lot of it's like, we have people that we could find, with guns and drugs and all of that kind of stuff. And we need to be working on that. We also need to be looking at people who are, child abuse and all of that kind of stuff. But what I tell people is that the vast majority of the community of Springfield will be impacted by something like a property crime. And so when you talk to people about like, what do you want us to fix? They want us to stop their cars getting stolen. They want us to stop stuff being taken off their porch. They don't want to pay more at the grocery store because people are just pushing carts out and not paying for it. That's what affects most people. We still need to focus on, obviously, the person crimes, and we have detectives that do that. But the vast majority of people are impacted by these other crimes. And that reminds me, the stores have said that they've seen a big reduction in like, what we just call them push outs, where they would just fill up a cart and just walk out the door. And I'm not gonna get into any stores' policies because a lot of them are corporate or whatever, but most stores have gotten away from loss prevention being able to do any type of intervention. They can say stop, but most of the time if they don't stop, then there's nothing else that they can do. So that really limits their ability. It's a visual deterrent most of the time now, but if we're there, then obviously we can take more action. And so they've seen a reduction in those things. Yeah. You're gonna have to tell me what the second part of that question was.
Well, actually, you kind of addressed it, and I think, the issue of being data driven in terms of what you're doing, focusing on it, I think that was a key issue. The homeless thing is just something that's kind of rattling around in my head.
Yeah.
You could maybe add, and I didn't realize this, but whenever Oregon makes the Wall Street Journal, it's very positive, and I didn't realize that Duluth and Eugene and Duluth had a divorce. But you're still working with Duluth, so maybe we kind of talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, so Cahoots, obviously Portland didn't have Cahoots, we had some other things, but Cahoots has been around my entire career. I mean, it's been down here, I think, over 30 years. And so Springfield had a contract with Cahoots and Eugene had a contract with Cahoots. They were set up a little bit differently. We had Cahoots responding to and doing different things than Eugene did. And I don't know what exactly Eugene had, but for us, it's really a response driven to assist the officers. So if we have somebody who we think is experiencing, a mental health crisis, and I'll get into how that's changing in just a second. We had Cahoots. If we have somebody who calls and says, like my child is acting out, I can't control them. Like when I first got hired, we would get dispatched to those and I'm like, what am I supposed to do to a out of control 6-year-old? I used to have parents like, well, what can you do? I'm like, I can't do anything more than you can do. Like, look at the tools on my belt. What would you like me to use on a 6-year-old? So it was like, so we have Cahoots available for that. If it's like a person down on the sidewalk, we don't have any indication that there's any weapons or any violence, Cahoots can go check on that. They have the ability, a lot of times, we have things called police officer holds. I don't know if folks are aware of those. So if I go to a call and I feel that you are a danger to yourself or a danger to others, and I can articulate that, I can take you into custody and take you to the hospital. And I have to document it. It's not an arrest. It's a police officer hold and I take you there. A lot of times people do want to go, but they don't want to go in a police car. So that's where, and they don't want to have the police drop them off at the hospital, right? Cahoots can come do that. If they're voluntary and they want to go, Cahoots can come and they can talk to the person and they can take them to the hospital for us. I think it just makes people feel better and it probably has a much better look people feel that if they're taken that way than if they go in the back of a police car with a police officer. So Cahoots is very, very valuable to Springfield. I think the officers appreciate that. There's just a time and place where maybe we go to make sure everything's safe and then somebody else comes in and you don't have the uniform, playing an impact in what people are saying or what people are thinking. So my hope is that the Cahoots will be able to continue to provide service in Springfield. Obviously, I think they're gonna have to do some staffing changes because of what happened in Eugene, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to continue. The city did fund it for this next year, which I was very happy about. So I'm hopeful, and they take a lot of calls. And so if that went away, then those calls, the majority of them would go back to the officers. There's some calls that we wouldn't go to anymore, like somebody called about their child or something, we said, sorry, we don't respond to that.
The state's had a pretty active school resource officer program in high
Yes.
school. Do we still, is it changing or is it gonna be around like it is?
No, as long as I'm here, we're gonna keep school resource officers. I think they're fantastic. That is something, and I think Springfield was probably one of the first departments a long time ago. You had school resource officers. There were a lot of agencies across the country that have cut them, but now they're starting to bring them back. I can't stress how important it is to have the officers in the schools so that as the kids interact, they have that face every day. I've talked to both of our school resource officers and they're probably two of the busiest police officers that we have. They're constantly engaging, if it's not with the students, with staff, just how many issues that they can address long before it ever gets to a police call. It would be great if we could expand it. Because right now, how it works is the officers are assigned to a high school, and then they also have the feeder schools into that high school, so elementary, junior, middle school, into high schools. So they could be bouncing around from school to school depending on what's going on. And then if one of them goes on vacation, then the other one covers all of it, so it's a lot. It would be great if we were able to have more officers at the lower level schools, but that's a side unfortunately. But I do think they're very, very important. Yeah. And I know we have a lot of support from the school district as well.
It's just like one of the officers.
I can't remember if we fund one or if we split each one, but it equals like one. Yeah.
Can you speak to some of the collaboration between jurisdictions, so EPD, UOPD, Lane County Sheriff's Office?
Right, so obviously EPD is the largest, they're about, I think, 3 times the size that we are, and then the county. And like I was just saying, like driving here, I'll give you an example. So if you're going down to Franklin, like the buy-to that's right there, that's in the county. But the county is huge, right? And so if you were to take any moment in time, the chances that a county officer is near the buy-to or a Springfield officer is near buy-to, I mean, you can figure out which one's gonna get there faster most of the time. So there's a lot of collaboration in those types of things where like the county may only have a few deputies on duty, but there's something happening right near Springfield. So we'll go and assist them with that. Same thing with Eugene. We have a good working relationship. There's not a department I can think of anywhere that if somebody said, hey, we need cover, that we wouldn't respond. And that's usually like Just to explain, so if an officer says I need like code 1 cover, that just means, hey, can you swing by kind of thing, and then it goes all the way up to code 3 cover, and code 3 cover is like, I need somebody to help me here right now. And my expectation is if anybody, anywhere calls for code 3 cover, then we would go assist them. My expectation is they would come assist us. But we do work together on different, projects. We work with the county on some of the, organized retail theft missions. Just because we're able to bring them in and assist in some of the locations that are actually in the county, but we have more resources. We work a lot with U of OPD on the special events that they have. And so we'll assist with staffing on those. We collaborate on like the marathon. There's like lots of different things. So I think we have a good working relationship with the other agencies. I know that also like, Cottage Grove, I have a good working relationship with the chief down there. So I think we have a good county-wide collaboration, and if somebody needs help, they know that they can reach out, and because a lot of times everybody's pretty short-staffed. It's getting better, I will tell you that. We're getting more applicants for all of our hiring processes, which is great. But with everybody being short, we have had to rely on each other for staffing some of those bigger events.
How reliant is Springfield Police Department on federal funding?
Not very reliant that I'm aware of, yeah, so we do get a couple of like federal grants, they're small. We have some pass-through grants, but if it all went away, I don't necessarily think that you would see a huge impact in service levels. Usually we use it to buy things, yeah, it's not related to like paying for people.
You just released a report, I think it's your annual report on use of force,
Yes,
and that's been an issue in the past. Can you talk about that?
just the report itself or why we do it?
Sure.
Okay. So obviously, police force is a topic everybody wants to know about, and I tell people all the time, there is report on this. And a lot of the officers have asked, why do you make us report on this? And I say, because I want people to know how effective they are. I want people to know that if I get the dog out of the car and say, if you run, the dog is going to chase you, and you don't run, then we've stopped the incident right there. That's a very effective tool, right? It didn't escalate anything, it actually de-escalated things. So that's why we report on all of those things, all the way up to all of the force that we do use. The courts have been very clear that officers have to be able to articulate every use of force and the justification for it. So, that's why we report on it. Every single one of these gets reviewed at different levels. And if we have issues, I want those to be addressed as soon as possible. Because again, if we have something that's happening at a low level that's not the expectation or the outcome that we're looking for, I want it addressed long before it ever reaches the next one. And so that's why we review every single one of them, and then we report on them as well.
So I guess a few years ago, there was the allegation was, let's say, that Springfield was too quick to use force, and I know that the predecessor worked on that a lot. What's your philosophy around that and how do you have things changed?
I've heard, rumors, obviously, since I've been, but since I've been here, I have not seen that. I think that I know that we do a lot more documentation now, right? It's not like, well, I went here and this happened and we got in a fight and they went to jail, right? It's like, no, I want you to be able to articulate every single use of force, because it all comes down, the standard is reasonableness, that's what they're judged upon. During an investigation, whether it's internal or whether it's criminal, the standard is reasonableness. I mean, there people talk about the Graham standard all the time, and there's lots of components to it, but it is totality of the circumstances, so everything that's going on with that officer and what they were thinking at that moment, and whether or not that was reasonable. And so what Chief Shearer and I have really, since we come down here, is that's the standard that we use in everything, that's how it's reviewed. And then the officers are now, documenting that, and their force has to fall into that reasonableness standard. So does it look different than it did 5 years ago? I don't know. I wasn't here 5 years ago. But I know I feel comfortable now that the officers are making those reasonable decisions. And maybe it's that they're using different force before, instead of, using a taser. Maybe now they're using more, time and distance. Maybe they're talking to people longer. That's one of the things that both Chief Shearer and I stress is there's very, very rarely is there a rush, right? There are times, don't get me wrong, there are times when force has to be used and there's times when it's immediate that force has to be used. But there are also a lot of times too where time and distance, and talking to people and lower that need for force. And so we've just tried to build it in where officers understand that I don't care if it takes you an hour and 45 minutes to end this call, if you end it appropriately. I also don't care if you have to end it in 30 seconds to save yourself or someone else. I just want you to be able to articulate why you did what you did. And then, be able to make sure that that follows those standards that we talked about.
So how do you monitor that?
For force? So how it works is if I'm an officer and I go out and I use any type of force, so from that control hold to the show of force to a force tool to a takedown, anything that I use, I'm required by policy to enter it into a system that we call Blue Team. And Blue Team is a very common reporting system designed for police. And basically I have to go in and I have to say, okay, at this date, at this time, at this location, associated to this call, I used this level of force, right? I struck someone, I used a taser, whatever it is I did, I used a control hold. The officers have to enter that. That gets sent to the sergeant. The sergeant then has to take that information, they have to read the police report, they have to pull the body worn camera, they have to pull the in-car video, they compare those things and make sure that everything that the officer did, one was in policy, and then it was documented, and all of their actions, reasonableness standard and everything that I was talking about, was met. And then depending on the type of force, once the sergeant reviews it, it gets sent to the lieutenant. And the lieutenant has to repeat it. They read the report, they watch the video, they watch the in-car video, they can talk to the officer, they can talk to a witness officer. If at any point during that time, they think that there was something like either criminal or out of policy, it gets sent to our professional standards division. And professional standards starts what we call an administrative or internal. Most people think of it as internal affairs. Now it's called professional standards. It could start an internal affairs investigation. And that would be that either the sergeant or the lieutenant has a concern about that, and they're looking for potential policy violations. And then if for some reason, which knock on wood, I hope it never happens, there was a thought of a criminal that needed to be done, that would immediately come to my level, and then we would make a determination. Most criminals in an agency our size would be sent out in another agency to investigate that.
Last night, actually, I was at a board meeting and I got to meet Officer Newton.
Yeah.
And the Springfield High Booster Club, their agency came to, for like a little partnership, and told us about the June 14th K9 competition.
Yes.
And so, just a plug for it, it's supposed to be a really huge event, 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah, it's big.
And it goes to raise money for your K9.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Our canines, most everything for our canines comes from community donations. Combines are, as you can imagine, very expensive. and it takes a lot to train them. So it's always the Saturday before Father's Day. And, I didn't know about it until I came down here, which I can't imagine how we didn't know, like how Portland's never sends a dog down here to compete in it. But it's actually really fun. And this year it's back at, Springfield. So that's their high school. Was that Springfield again?
Yep.
Oh, where was I? Oh, no, sorry, we did a track meet. We did a, police and track competition over at their scene last year. That's what I was thinking. Which that was by far entertaining as well. If you want to see, but 40-year-old cops trying to run against high school kids. I don't need to tell you the results. Yeah, so the canine competition is funny. We've never been there. I think so we have, we're gonna be down a couple. We're down at least one dog this year, because we had, Nord just retired. But, Nord is also gonna be throwing out the first pitch at is it Touch a Truck?
Yeah, we're drifters.
Yes. So, so we had a retirement, and then we have two, relatively new dogs. So we have Poker and Taro. I do think it's funny that Poker's handler's last name is Cash, so they're Poker and Cash. And then, and we will be getting another dog. So when we're all fully staffed with apprehension canines, so the dogs that like look for people, we have 4. And then we have Cash, who is our, narcotics dog. And he is the biggest hit of the canine competition because he doesn't care about any of that stuff. So if you like run from Cash, he doesn't care. So like when they do these different competitions, so we have to modify it. So instead of a bad guy running from Cash, his handler throws a ball and Cash will go catch that. This is a demonstration on how he finds narcotics and that kind of stuff. And he's just a big goofy yellow lab. So, yeah, if you can make it, it is a good time. So, thank you for bringing anything about that. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your community outreach program and like community service officers and how all that fits into your structure?
Yeah, for sure. And those have been fantastic additions, I think, to police departments. A lot of police departments now have those. So community service officers, trying to think of what else they're called, but basically they are, they wear a uniform similar. They do carry pepper spray.
Do prevention through design, with a lot of our spaces as well as with our behavior.
Yeah.
So, like in the community or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about SEPTED, so that crime prevention through
Yes.
environmental design. Yeah,
Yes.
so, I'll have to check and see if PSOs do SEPTED evaluations. So basically, it's like if you own a business, they could come out and, say, oh, well, if you put lighting here, or if you trim this shrubbery here, it would give people, a place to hide, or you have a better view of your driveway, something like that. I'm actually not sure, and I want to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'll have to check.
Okay, well, I know Janina has done like de-escalation, things like that, which that's the behavioral part.
Yes.
Because I do think that the people in the community, we can prevent crime together. So it's a partnership with law enforcement, so that we're more, like we're taking an active role in our own communities. To
Yes.
prevent crime by keeping our eyes out and by how we act and what we do And I think that that's some of the training, because de-escalation is so important these days.
Yeah,
And so anyway, that was just my thought. And if you ever talk with EPD, because they do, they're outreach trainers, they actually go out and provide sessions on these topics.
yeah,
And I know that that's a cost, but it's just kind of a cool program that they have.
yeah. So our CSOs would do like the subset evaluations, but we also have, our crisis intervention team. Our coordinator for that and a couple of the other officers have gone to businesses and done de-escalation training for them.
Okay.
So that is something that when people ask, is there anything that you can come help my staff with? I know that they've done some training at the hospitals, they've done some training, at a couple of the businesses on Main Street. So there, we do have that available as well.
That's very cool.
You coordinate with immigration officials at all?
So the law is very clear on what, like what I can do as a local law enforcement and what I cannot do. So the only time that we can take action is if there is something signed by a judge. So no, we don't really.
You said, did you say you have 69 current officers or total employees?
That's from me all the way down to the people we hired 2 weeks ago.
Everybody.
Everybody.
So that feels.
And so wait, I shouldn't say that. We are authorized 69. We do not have 69 right now. I
Okay,
think we have about 63, 63, maybe 64.
we got some vacancies.
Yep.
How do you feel, how do you feel about recruitment retention as it is now? Where would you like to be? And what's your greatest asset or tool to recruit really qualified to keep them here?
So our greatest tool, our greatest recruiter, the officers that work there. And so, I've told people like the last 5 people that we hired, or the last 2, maybe 6, 5 or 6 people that we hired over the last 2 recruitments, I talked to every single one of them every single time. But I was like, why did you want to work there? Every single one of them said they either knew a Springfield police officer, talked to a Springfield police officer, or went on a ride along. And this is where they decided to come work. So that's what I tell the officers. I'm like, you are our greatest recruitment tool. One of the things that hampers us right now, not as much here, but in agencies that border, like if you take up Portland, Gresham, the let's say Ashland or agency on the east side of Oregon, is that Oregon, I have no opinion on it. It's just that like Oregon's pay equity, I cannot give a recruitment bonus. But if you are a Washington agency or a California agency, they can. So when people are looking to start somewhere and, well, I live in Portland, but Vancouver's a 15-minute drive, they'll pay me 20 grand to start. So I know that there's been talks about that and changing that. And it doesn't just impact police departments, right? That impacts fire departments. I've heard about like, trucking companies, anybody that has that type of thing, it's an impact. Whether that gets changed or not, I don't know if it ever will. But we do see that can make things difficult, but like as far as recruiting, it's our department. I like the fact that people want to come work here. We've had a lot of laterals lately, and I think that really says something about the department. Both Chair and I will continue is we want the officers to go do police work. We still think that police work is very valuable. But I also, so deflection, and is everybody aware of deflection that's in the county? That is, so if you are arrested for certain drug crimes, or arrested for a crime that has like a drug nexus, so let's say you're arrested for a lower level theft, but you are telling the officers, I steal because, I have a $40 a day, whatever habit. We have the option to refer you to county deflection. Programs like deflection have been around my entire career. I will tell you that what Lane County has right now is probably the best deflection program I've seen in my career. Clint Riley, who used to be the jail commander, retired from that. He's now Lane County's deflection manager. And he's doing a fantastic job. And there's 2 reasons why it's working so much better. One is so when you get arrested, the officers refer you to deflection. So how that works is they call a number and they say, hey, I'm out here at Walmart and I have so-and-so and I want to refer them for deflection. Certain people can't. You can't have domestic violence convictions, you can't be a registered sex offender. There's certain things that just disqualify you. But if you meet all of the qualifications, the deflection programs immediately sends out what we call a peer navigator. And peer navigators are people with lived experience who are now trained in mentorship and and that kind of stuff, and they respond to the scene. And they do it relatively quickly here. I mean, within like probably 10 or 15 minutes, we have somebody out in the middle of the night. I mean, it's really good. And they come out and the officer says, hello, this is who this is. They want to be in deflection, and we hand them off. The difference is the officer then goes back and he writes the police report and he writes the probable cause affidavit and he turns it in and then says this person's in deflection. The county deflection program then takes it from there. If that person does not complete deflection, that charge is then issued and a warrant is issued for them. And then, so there's if you don't do what you say you're gonna do, then you still get this consequence. We're giving you an option to not face that consequence pre-arrest. Now, let's say that somebody is having a really bad day and they get arrested and they want nothing to do with us, nothing to do with deflection. They're being more kind of aggressive or whatever. We wouldn't call for deflection then. It's not appropriate, but they get to jail. And then they realize, because a lot of times people are under the influence when we contact them, right? And then after they've been in jail for a day or two, they're like, all right, I got a better perspective. The other thing that Springfield has, which is great, is we have a drug court. So now they've already been arrested, but they have the opportunity to work their way through our drug court and still receive services. So folks arrested here actually have kind of a double shot at help. And so that's been very helpful.
Is that the contract with Emergence?
So we don't have a contract with anybody. Deflection, the program may have a contract with Emergence, but they there's one other thing I want to mention, but deflection may have that contract, but the only folks that are the peer navigators come from an organization that has a location off of Main Street in Springfield called Ideal Options. And Ideal Options is a treatment program, and that's where the peer navigators. I think Clint did a really good job. He brought in all of the peer navigators, came into our briefings and met all of our officers. It was interesting because some of our officers had previously arrested the peer navigators. So, but that was a long time ago, and everybody's all good. But it actually brought a lot of credibility to the program because the officers were able to see this person's been clean for 10, 15 years. They turned their life around, they're married, they have kids, whatever that is. And so I think the officers, the other thing that deflection does is they give updates to the officers. So they'll get an email, officer so-and-so, person you referred to deflection has attended, all of their meetings or they're actively participating. So they get a bit of buy-in, which before you just referred this person and then off they went. You never knew what happened to them. And then if they didn't do anything, there was no consequence, which is frustrating because then you just keep repeating the cycle too. Not everybody is successful and that's okay. You can, be referred again if it's appropriate. The other thing that we got a grant for, so when Measure 110 was repealed and it turned to House Bill 4002, the state gave, I think it's roughly $10 million in grant funding for cities or municipalities to for treatment. So we applied for, it's called MAT, it's medical assisted treatment. So we applied for a MAT grant. And so we have a MAT program in our jail. And so that means and there's two different ways you can do it. A lot of people have heard about, people having to take, what's the medication that we take? Methadone. So that's not the drug that's used, but people have heard of that term, like methadone treatment. And where you would either, take the tab and you put it on your tongue and you have to do it every day. And then, but there's also injections. And so our MAT program is injections and it's all run through our health provider. And basically, if we have somebody who is in custody and they want to start treatment, they have a whole program that they run through while they're in our custody. And obviously the judge works with them, our healthcare provider works with them. And then slightly before they're going to be released, they're given an injectable, and the injectable lasts for roughly 28 days. And that's supposed to help with any type of craving for whatever it is that they may be addicted to. There's different options, medication and such that they can give them, but our grant right now is injectables. And then as soon as they're going to be released, we coordinate with Ideal Options, again, same group that does deflection, and they basically meet them at the door as they're getting released. That's mean, it doesn't always work exactly like that, but that's what we try, is that they meet them at the door as they're walking out. So they have that community, it's called a soft handoff to a treatment provider, and then they're supposed to keep that follow-up. They're supposed to help with them, you know, if they need injectables more for more months. If there's other, you know, getting them set up with, different types of, whether it's AA or NA or another group, there's a lot of groups around. They're supposed to help them get set up with that. And what we're hoping is that the folks that we see, we don't see them again. That this program, that helping them get that medication, this is really hard if you are addicted to something and then you get let out of jail at 2 a.m. I mean, it's not really very difficult to see how that's gonna work a lot of times. They're gonna go back to that kind of same environment with nothing to help them not go back to that kind of behavior. So we're trying to set them up so that when they get out, they have like a good foot to stand on. Yeah, but that's a grant. And so we will reapply for that grant if it's available next year.
Back to the recruitment question, is it a budget issue, or is there something else that keeps you from giving your bonuses?
That's a state law, it's a pay equity. Pay equity says, no hiring, no retention bonus.
State law says that?
Yeah.
That's a
It's a new one. I don't think
That's a new one, yeah. And again,
I looked by after you left.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't necessarily really, I mean, I don't have an opinion on it, it's just people say, why don't you do it? I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it in the review, of
Yeah.
the city mayor's review, but it seems like, particularly if you can give it to lateral transfers, you save the city a lot of money.
Yeah.
Assuming a world that does not exist and you don't have financial constraints, what would your view of the optimal staffing of sworn officers be?
I would love it, so this is just my world, right? If we had probably double. Double would be, you know, we would be able to go do all of the patrol stuff that we do, respond to those 911 calls. But then we could actually focus on, you know, not only organized retail theft, but we get a lot of like online reporting of child abuse. You know, there's a lot of, I think, probably career criminals, that are out doing things that, you know, we just maybe kind of know about. But if you had like a task force, I mean, there's just a bunch of, you know, probably at any time, there's people who have warrants. We would have a team that could go take care of that. So yeah, just having enough people to respond to calls, but then do all of the extra stuff that we know we could do if we had more staffing. So in my perfect world, double.
That's how many officers?
So, well, sworn, that would, well, you'd need double the supervision too. I was gonna say just patrol, I'm like, no, we need double the supervision too. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, two of me, two deputy chiefs, yeah.
The average occupancy of the jail.
I think we sit probably mid-40s to 50, and yeah, right in there. Maybe kind of just depends on like if it's a weekend or like a Tuesday afternoon. But I think we sit right around probably 40. Yeah.
Lend out space to.
We do rent out beds. We rent out beds to Eugene. Oh boy. I can't remember who else. Eugene, Junction City, and Cottage Grove, I think. Yeah, so we do rent out some beds. And there were questions, people asked, well, you have a lot more beds in the jail. We do, but we also run into constraints sometimes too of not everybody can be, cause some of them are doubles. Actually, a lot of them are doubles, and not everybody can be with somebody else. So sometimes we run into an issue where like, we have a lot of people who cannot be in a cell with someone else. And so maybe if in a perfect world and I had double the police officers, and nobody had any problems when they were in jail, you could fit more people in there, but it doesn't always work out that way.
We are at the top of the hour, so can we get a round of applause for Chief Resch? And Len, can you remind us what our program is in June? June
The
5th, I
first
believe?
program in June will be the State Marine Board. And they will be talking about water safety among other things and how to handle yourself in the water and how the rivers in this part of Oregon can either be fun or deadly. And that's June 5th, I believe.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.